Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Mavs Moneyball After Dark. It is Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe coming to you here on Monday night, the 22nd of August. We are in just the dead of deadest zones. But how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a while since we've been able to talk on one of these.
That's right.
So it feels good to get back in the swing of things.
It does, and getting in the habit of doing this again will at once I on the one hand dread it, and on the other hand, we were just talking in the pre-show, making me do stuff I feel a little more accomplished. Like you fight off the suck of it all sometimes by being busy. And I am looking forward to Mavs basketball. I've sort of reached that point in the calendar. We don't really have anything that we specifically wanted to talk about, but a number of things have kind of happened. I talked to Ben a little bit about the schedule. He and I talked a little bit about the Slovenia versus Serbia game. They played Croatia the other day. There's the NBA is just kind of in the point in the calendar where there's ridiculous fights happening. Mark Cuban went and did an hour-long interview with Taylor Rooks where he told a story. I feel crazy. Have I just blocked out that Kobe story he told? Is that a new thing or is that an old thing that I just get mad about?
Yeah, that's an old. I swear I've heard him tell that story before.
Okay,
that wasn't the first time I remember hearing that.
It's maybe I just blocked it out of my brain related to that. For anybody that missed it, he basically told Taylor Rooks a story on a podcast that was he thought that the Mavericks securing Kobe in 2007. Yeah, 2007 was a done deal, and it was not. And I just really don't remember this because it feels so ridiculous. But past that, it's kind of like the wait and see. We still got this last roster spot open. Where is your brain recently? Because you've kind of been actually using your time off like you should have, like I should have.
Yeah, I think it's something that's interesting. I'm trying to figure out how much of it is Cuban talk and how much of it is real. But I believe he did an interview with our friend Dalton Trigg at DallasBasketball.com. Or I don't know if it was last week. I can't remember when.
It was over the weekend.
Recent. Yeah, it was recent.
Over the weekend.
Okay,
because he told me about it, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. He asked Cuban for an interview. Cuban said no, and Dalton sort of was like, come on, why not? And then Cuban went on and made some news by sort of saying that Frank Ntilikina is going to be the third guard. Which
that's not what I specifically want to talk about, because that kind of just made me
that made me laugh. It's just so objectively not true.
Right. That's just him selling. He's a salesman. He does that every summer. That's fine. It's his team. It's whatever. I've kind of gotten over that part of it, but
right.
He did indicate that the summer might be over for them, and they would carry that roster spot into the regular season. And I'm trying to figure out if that's just him trying to set expectations or if that's legitimately what they're planning to do, because I think a lot of hope left from Mavericks fans in terms of the offseason not being over is that they can get involved in if or when Donovan Mitchell gets traded, or if and when Kevin Durant gets traded, that the Mavericks can like worm their way into those deals. Or the Jazz, if once they trade Mitchell, they're obviously going to not be a competitive team anymore, and they've got a handful of veterans that they probably won't have use for. Maybe the Mavericks could capitalize on. But part of me is starting to feel like, you know what, I think that they are just, I think they're good. And I think something you talked about before you went on vacation, you've talked about it multiple times, how this season might be them like taking their medicine in terms of their roster building assets. And I wonder, if they really are done for the summer and they're going to carry that roster spot open, I wonder if there's a part of them that is just like, look, we still owe KP. We still owe a pick on the KP trade. We're capped out till 2024. We know Luka with this top 6-7 guys can be a competitive team. Why are we going to trade? If it costs a first rounder to get like Bojan Bogdanovic, like why? He's not going to, like, if he's not going to move the needle. Like, I wonder if they're just like, we know we've only got one more big trade left in us during this Luka extension. I wonder if they're just like, let's just wait until we know we're going to get an all-star. I wonder if that's the thought process over there.
I mean, that would make sense, because the further we get away from not signing Goran Dragic, the less sense that makes. Because number one, Dragic looks amazing, even though, let's be realistic. I told somebody, who did I say this to? Told somebody that like my baseline for him was like 35 to 50 games, maybe. And I know that like if the Mavericks want to get somebody, they probably want to get like a real potential guy that's going to like get minutes. And Dragic gets hurt a lot. That's a fact. He's 36 and he's not getting younger. It is what it is. But if you assume that like, okay, they didn't want that deal for whatever reason, whether they didn't think he was good enough, which I just can't bring myself to believe, whether they had a different role for him, which I think might be true, but also weird. Going in with that flexibility and basically hoping that something breaks in this like log jam makes sense. I hate it. Let's be clear. But I get the logic behind it, because you never know what's going to happen. Mark Cuban really probably doesn't want to pay anybody else anything, because it's like the Mavericks books have been weird for years. Like, do you remember when they signed like Gal Meckel to a multi-year deal? They had a lot of dead money on, not a lot. They had a number of players on their dead money for like small amounts. And I bet he just doesn't want to do that. Like if you're already in the luxury tax, who am I to say, oh, you should just cut the guy that you're having to pay, a time and a half for, or whatever the salary, the luxury tax thing is. It's like, if you don't need it, don't do it. I'm very curious how that plays out once the grind happens. I mean,
and there's always buyout guys every year, and I feel like they've done this before. Like, didn't they? I don't know if they did. Maybe it was because of they had an extra roster spot from the Rondo trade. But like in 2015, they signed Amari Stoudemire. I feel like there was one year they signed David Lee. I feel like they kind of like having that open spot because they like the buyout market. And I wonder if that's what they're thinking, because there is going to be some roster churn whenever all this trade mania, trade request stuff eventually gets settled. And if you feel like even if Kevin Durant doesn't get traded, Mitchell, it feels like that's just an inevitability with Mitchell. So
did you see how many picks Stephen A. Smith said that the Jazz were demanding for him?
I did not see that, but it's Danny. Well, that means Danny Ainge, man.
So I think the market might be held for a while, but I mean, you've got to be right on this, because it's just like the team building element of it just doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, there was this odd debate on the Twitter timeline, as there is every point in this year in August, where it's like somebody like is one of the various Luka Doncic like Luka Doncic fan accounts saying that like, look at the other rosters that were in like the top 8. The Mavericks have the worst roster. Like it was a distilled version of what you and I have been saying for years. It's not insulting. Fans who are like, oh, well, so-and-so's an NBA player. It's like, sorry, man. I would take so many of the guys that the Mavericks ran up against over the like 6, 7, 8 guys in the Mavericks roster. Like you can't tell me Frank Ntilikina is a good NBA player relative to someone like Cam Johnson. I'm not interested in that discussion. And I'm meandering now because that's just what August podcasts do. But it's an element of this roster that they have right now is just it's got a narrow path to success, and the path is Luka Doncic being otherworldly. And right now, I'll tell you, man, I feel really good about that option.
Yeah, and yeah, I did see that tweet about like the rosters, and it was kind of funny to say that after like this was the best playoff run for the Mavericks role players in the Luka era so far. So that was kind of funny. I just thought the time, like I got it in 2019, 2020, but like they actually, like they came through. Like, I mean, Luka actually was not, he kind of struggled with his shooting in the last playoffs. I mean, he was obviously still really, 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 really good, but I just thought that was funny timing. Like the last season was actually the season where it felt like they did have like 3 or 4 like elite role players because Dinwiddie was playing out of his mind, and Bullock and Finney Smith really, I think, hit another gear in that second half of the season. So that was just kind of funny. But yeah, I think, they don't have a lot to trade. I think that's, I just don't think they want to give up anything right now for something they would think is a marginal upgrade. Now that they've kind of reached a step where they feel like, okay, Wood, Dinwiddie, Dorian, Bullock, like we've got enough guys, that we feel confident in. And I don't think that was the case in 2019. I don't think that was the case in 2020. And so maybe they just feel a little bit better about their situation where they don't feel like they have to go all in just yet on a role player. And I mean, like, they're capped out. They can't really do anything next summer unless they find a way to do some trades. So, I would love it if they would, maybe take on a bad contract and get a draft pick, but that's just, I don't know if that will ever be their MO. So other than that, I don't know what else they're gonna, I can kind of see it. Like, yeah, it'd be sweet if next week Donovan Mitchell gets traded and the Mavericks find a way to get like Bojan Bogdanovic. But if he costs a first, like if Donovan Mitchell costs however many firsts, I'm assuming the Jazz are going to ask for a first for one of these role players. I've been talking about Jordan Clarkson would be a nice bench guard fit. Like, do you want to trade a first for either of those guys? Like, I actually, at this point, despite the fact that like this hasn't been an offseason I'm totally a fan of, like at that point, I'm just like, you know what? Let's just wait. Like, is that going to be the needle mover this season when you could maybe package that pick down the road? And again, I feel like I'm repeating like the planned powder stuff where it's like, well, why would we spend cap space on this guy when we can save it for the superstar? But I feel like with the trade market and first round picks, it's like, it's a little different. Like trades and first round picks, like we know that can return, like, the Mavericks can't force teams to take their cap space, but they can, or force players to take their money. But if they have enough first round picks, they can force teams to trade their players to them, if that makes a little sense. So
yeah,
I kind of get it, but I also understand like the frustration, like kind of.
Well, and so the argument kind of has to be right now. Okay, you expect you're hoping Luka plays 70 games, and that is a risky endeavor based on how he plays. Not the minutes. Like, I think he's going to play a ton of minutes this year. And I think also all of us, me, you, everyone, needs to remember the fact that he's a 23-year-old man. And at one point in time, Dirk Nowitzki played like 42 minutes a game forever. Michael Finley played 40-something minutes a game for 6 straight years. Like these guys are professional athletes. Luka looks incredible right now. And I mean, like, really, truly, hyperbolically incredible right now. And if Luka plays this many games, 70 games, the Mavs are going to win 46 of them. And then, you hope in the other ones you go 500, and then all of a sudden you're a 52 win team. I mean, I hate to be that, I mean, God, it must sound really weird to people who think I hate the team all the time. Shout out Mark Cuban. But I don't know. Right now, with having watching him play in the EuroLeague friendlies, I just find myself like really excited. And the thing about it is, and this is like the flip side of this, say something really unfortunate happens. Then what the Mavericks do is they basically bank on the fact that their top 10 pick that they owe, like they end up in the lottery and they figure something out in a draft that looks preposterous. Like that's not an expectation. Not saying they should tank, but it's just like with the way this roster is built right now, it's Luka or nothing. And that's okay.
Yeah. I actually think at this point, I'm less worried about the roster because, like you said, even losing Brunson, it's still Luka. They still have like 5 or 6 reliable shooters, give or take. Dinwiddie, it's, some playoff struggles aside, and some might be a little underselling it, because basically until like the end of that Phoenix series, he was pretty dreadful. But we saw what he did in the regular season. Obviously, he's not going to shoot 50% from the field and 40% from 3, but I feel like there's a difference. They've unlocked him. I don't know if it's Jason Kidd, God Sham God, him just returning, him in the right role in an organization that can win, and playing next to Luka. I feel pretty decent about him. And there's just a floor where it's like, if it's Luka with another ball handler and a couple shooters and roll man or pick and pop guy, like they can only be so bad. Like, I mean, think about how bad the Mavericks were at times in the first half of last season when Luka was out of shape and getting hurt and COVID. I mean, this team has basically had 2 straight seasons of COVID, all of these teams have had COVID wiping out like a month of their season, but the Mavs never really lose a beat. And it's pretty, I just keep thinking like, man, what if they play a full season without any of that BS? Like, what if Luka comes into camp in shape? They're obviously the likelihood of like a COVID outbreak of the last 2 seasons isn't really going to happen anymore with the state of things. So like, I feel pretty confident that they can be really consistent from start to finish. I think I'm more worried about just the rest of the conference, to be honest. Like, I'm less worried about the Mavs and more like, I feel like there's just all these teams that are just loading up and getting better and better. And not to say that they're better, all of them are better than the Mavs, but it's just,
Sure.
it's just, worrying. And it's like, man, New Orleans put the fear of God into the into the Suns before the Mavericks played the Suns. And that was without Zion. And like, Memphis is getting better. And like, it's just tough. It's like the Western Conference. Like, it's every year, it's like an arms race. These teams in the West just keep getting better and better.
I talked to my Pelicans guy today. The show's going to go up Wednesday morning, and I am leaning towards the Pelicans being better than the Grizzlies. I know that's wild, but that's just where my head is, because it's like
Matt Moore's going to hate you.
Well, when they closed, like, this is a little thing, but like after the trade for CJ McCollum, they closed on a hell of a win pace. Like, they
Brandon Ingram got healthy.
And then you're adding Zion, who's terrifying. And let's just say, I don't know, let's not get into specifics there, but I'll just say that like so this brings me back to the schedule and getting off to a good start. Now, you said something, I just tweeted out a pair of photos, and it was Luka after it was like December preseason 2020. So after the bubble, when he managed to just let himself go like nobody's business, and then him taking a hook shot over Jokic earlier this week. And let's just put it like this. I think people are understandably worried about the volume of basketball Luka Doncic is playing. He's gone from 100 plus games. I guess he won't have played 100 plus games, but the NBA season that the Mavericks played was all like a strict 100 games. And then he goes and starts playing these friendlies. Then he goes to Eurobasket, and then he is playing NBA basketball again. I will tell you what, guys, if we have been talking for 2.5 years about if Luka Doncic comes into camp in shape, I think he's going to look how he did to start the 19-20 season. The Mavericks started that season 16-5. The Mavericks schedule's a little bit dicey to start the year. Like, they need to play 500 basketball, but just right now, I'm leaning into feeling good about stuff, which, it's funny. You and I did this last year too, and then they played 500 basketball, only we hated how they looked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll see. And like, you're right about Luka and the way he looks, but man, people can get mad at me all they want, but Luka is like a shapeshifter, and I will not believe it until I see him on the court in October. Like, I just need to get him to the season, because we've seen him go from super in shape to 3 weeks, and he looks like, he had Taco Bell every day.
Tim
for
McMahon
lunch.
said he was playing at the start of last season north of 260.
This is why we were going insane when we were like, this is a thing, and people are like, oh no, it's all this other stuff, and it's like, come on, guys, like, what are we looking at here?
Well, and that's okay, because it was shocking.
Yeah,
because it happened 2 years in a row. That's the really specific thing. But like right now, I'm just I feel okay about stuff. So like they start. I should have had the schedule pulled up. Was there any element of the schedule that sort of like jumped out at you? I mean, they play 17 times in November. That jumps out at me. That sucks.
Yeah, it seems. I think they're league average in back-to-backs, which is nice.
Yep.
And really, you pointed it out. I mean, the start of their schedule, if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are in Brooklyn and they're playing games to start that season, I mean, the first 4 games are crazy. I mean, 3 out of 4 on the road, all 4 against KD doesn't get traded, presumably all title contenders, basically, or maybe not title play, at least playoff contenders with New Orleans. So I'll be curious to see, because like we both said, I'm not worried about this team February through March, beginning April. Like how many times they've proven the last 2 seasons that they can reach a gear, and usually that's coincided with Luka hitting his gear. I just want to see the good start, and it's going to be probably the hardest 4-game stretch they've had in the Luka era to start a season. So they're going to show us right away how ready they are for the season. Not, they can go 0-4 and I still wouldn't be like shocked or like, oh, the team's done, because, we've seen 2 years now that this team.
I love the Phoenix opening night game.
Yeah, that's fun.
Like then they play them in the weird like rivalry week that the NBA has going on at some point in January. Like they're really playing up, and I mean, the more I think about it, gosh, I cannot wait. They broke the Suns, I think, in a really like sort of what happened to the Mavericks in 2007. Like it's one of those things that you need to find a way back from, and I just don't know if they can, because I was talking to Mason Ginsberg, one of the Pelicans guy I know, and I just said, like, I think that the Pelicans drained Phoenix like kind of spiritually to a degree. They were not ready for that series against the Pelicans, and it took a lot for them to beat the Pelicans. And then the Mavericks came in and just, after going down 0-2, really delivered a couple of body blows. So I was really impressed by that. But I'll tell you, the part of the schedule that I love more than anything else, they play Memphis 3 times in 9 days in March.
That'll be fun. I know the NBA is trying to push Phoenix as like the Mavs' new rival, but I think if you talk to a lot of Mavs fans online, it's starting the Luka thing, Memphis being in their division, Memphis being a team in the path for the Mavs, to contend. I kind of like that. I like the idea of like John, Luka. I mean, it sucks in terms of like hoping the Mavericks can dominate the division, but like those 2 guys playing each other every year, like if they can stay together, stay on healthy competitive teams, like, how much, as much as it sucked at the moment when the Mavericks would lose, like the fact that like Dirk and Tim Duncan basically guaranteed played each other 4 times a year for their entire careers was like kind of special as an NBA fan. Like,
yep,
that's how that rivalry really grew. So like I could, that's where I can see like if we're looking for a rival in the Luka era, I like Memphis for that.
Oh, and they backloaded it, because one of the beautiful parts about this last season, and I just think this matters with the play-in, is they've made March and April basketball matter. Like we had a great time covering these games. Like it was literally good for you and I, because all of a sudden tons of people who were kind of tuning, let's be honest, there's a huge segment of basketball fans that doesn't care about basketball right now at all. But when the NFL season ends, the calendar flips over and there they are. And we see it literally in our page views and downloads. And so it's great to have meaningful games for everybody at that point in the year. Like, man, I mean, they play Atlanta, the 4th to last game. There's some fun stuff in the scheduling. There was a really cool article by my friend Katie Heindall about how they put the schedule together. And it's really incredible the kind of stuff that they do. We bitch about the NBA a lot because they do a lot of weird stuff that we don't understand. But I will say I appreciate the way that they're trying stuff in the Adam Silver era. Like, the midseason tournament might not be for everybody, but like these home and home series where you play the same team twice in a row, sometimes in the same arena within 72 hours. I love that stuff. It's fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm starting, I think when the season ended, I understandably was like, okay, I need a break, and I think I'm starting to get back into, like, I'm ready, like I'm getting excited. I know that the off season, again, wasn't what we or anyone else particularly asked for, but like been enough time, like you said, watching Luka in these international games, like it's fun. Like I'm starting to get juiced up again, and it's exciting to think about.
Which is hilarious because at this point last offseason, you're like, can we just get to the playoffs? This team doesn't have anything interesting to tell me.
Yeah, well, hey, trading, I'm telling you, man, that Kristaps trade was a bolt of energy into my brain. That's all we've been asking for, roster shakeup, and we finally got it. And fortunately, it shook up maybe a little bit more than we wanted this summer with Brunson going, but it's like new guys. Like, now there's Christian Wood. Like, I want to know what that looks like. Like, let's get the season started. Like last season, I mean, there was some unknown with, how would Kidd and the new coaching staff affect the roster. But at the end of the day, I was just a little like, okay, I've seen these guys play 3 straight seasons, like with Maxey, Dorian, and Powell. It's like these guys have been on the team for like 6 years already. Like I'm, not anything against them, but new when the roster changes and there's new guys in new places, makes things a little bit more interesting.
Yep. Well, we got our countdown timer. We use an app that basically limits us, which is probably for the best because we do like hour 45-minute podcasts. But head over to MavsMoneyball.com. We've not been writing a ton. Our guy David Trink wrote a story which just tickled me to no end. The amazingly headlined "How Christian Wood Can Avoid Being Kristaps Porzingis," which if you haven't read, I recommend. Our man Panda Hank did a really fun video back in 2006 when Dirk scored 30-something points to help lead a comeback against the Denver Nuggets, where the final score was 83-80. So we're talking different basketball here. And then there's a couple other things here and there. We're going to speed back up eventually, but we wrote so much, and none of us get paid enough to work as hard as we do. To where I'm just kind of meandering through. I'm going to keep posting these podcasts though, because these are fun. We'll have a few more a little later this week, but maybe nothing over the weekend. So I'm not sure. You got anything else before we get out of here?
No, let's do it. Let's get out of here.
We did it. All right. Kirk Henderson, Josh Bowe, Mavs Moneyball After Dark. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. And let me know if there's anything you want us to talk about. Maybe we'll do a mailbag next week. We haven't done a mailbag in forever. Ooh. I don't know. So, all right. Kirk Henderson, Josh Bowe, Mavs Moneyball After Dark again. I'm really bad at this. Talk to you guys later.